What's up, YouTube? My name is Rich, and this is the Married to the Gun channel. Wanted to make a video for y'all today about buying your first handgun. I've been shooting since I was young, different reasons, ways, hunting, competition. I've been carrying concealed carry for 6 years. I've been teaching CCW classes for 3.5 years. So a little bit of experience. I really am passionate about this subject, and I have had a lot of people reaching out lately about what's the first handgun, what first handgun should I buy? Friends, acquaintances, family, things like that. So I just wanted to make a video for them, but I also figured I'd make it for everybody. That way, I can explain myself once and hopefully it helps. I want to jump right in, and I just, as a disclaimer first, this isn't going to be the video where I tell you that the Glock 19 Gen 2 is the best handgun of all time. No, it's not going to be like that. I'm going to give you reasons why, reasons and ideas to help make choices, because buying a firearm is a personal choice. In my experience, it's a very personal choice. So kicking that off, the number one consideration for choosing a handgun is what you're going to use it for. So kind of the main two that I'm seeing a lot lately are home defense and concealed carry. People buying firearms to keep in their home or keep on their person. Other people buying firearms to keep in a truck or something like that could definitely fall along the lines of either. If you're going to conceal carry that gun, awesome. If you're not, then it's probably going to fall more along the lines of home defense. There are other reasons to buy firearms like competition shooting, hunting, defense against animals. That's not as much of my area of expertise, but if you have questions or want to discuss it, comment below. Another reason to buy a handgun is because I freaking like it. This is an HK USP 45, Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2 pistol on there. Sometimes you just want to buy a pistol because of a movie or a video game or a comic book or even a book, and that's totally fine too. When it comes to buying a home defense handgun, for me, the most important thing is reliability. This is a Glock 17. This is something I've used for home defense and concealed carry. The most important thing for me, reliability, that this handgun is going to work when I need to use it. Hopefully I don't need to in a situation like that, but if I do, it better damn well work. After that, I think it's really important for certain accessories like a light, the ability to see what I'm shooting at or see what I'm not shooting at. Super important for me. Another one would be the actual ammunition I use, so that it's reliable, that it doesn't penetrate through a wall and hit another member of my family or maybe someone outside of my home. I want to make sure that the ammunition works as intended and doesn't over-penetrate. That's something that's important. And beyond that, it's going to mostly come down to shootability. And this is for every category. And what we mean by shootability is how easy it is to shoot the firearm. So when we jump into the concealed carry class, notice that I have a gun that's much smaller. Contrary to popular belief, it's easier, especially if the guns are the same caliber, to shoot a large gun than it is to shoot a small gun. Now, when it comes to concealed carry, the most important thing for me is always going to go ahead and be reliability again. If I need to use this firearm in concealed carry capacity, I'm probably going to be defending my life or someone else's, so I need to make sure it works. Beyond that, I find that where and how I actually carry the gun is super important. So what that means is size and weight are very important, relatively important. Here's another gun I carry. This is a Glock 19. You can see the difference in the width. This one's quite a bit wider. It might not look like a lot on camera, but it is definitely enough to make a difference in weight. And when you're tucking it in your waistband, which is how I prefer to carry, this one's actually a lot easier to carry. I will acknowledge, though, the smaller you go with a firearm, this is a Ruger LCP in 380, the more difficult in almost every case it becomes to shoot, especially if it's even close to the same caliber. So this is a 380. It's a more diminutive cartridge, but this 9mm, which is large, or even a plus P, for me is going to be easier to shoot in this firearm than 380 in this firearm. So just can't get my whole hand on it. The trigger, as you can see, it starts there. There's a lot of weight, and it takes a while to actually fire. That loud noise you heard is when it fires. The sights are almost non-existent. These things just stack up over and over. The lightweightness and size make it easier to conceal, but make the recoil harsher. So shootability is an important thing to consider when choosing both a home defense gun or a concealed carry gun. Now, the other most important thing when it comes to concealed carry, I think I kind of mentioned it, is actual holster selection. So how you're going to carry it, what holster you're going to choose. There are a ton of reputable brands. I love T-Rex Arms. I actually carry a Blade Tech holster. It's a little bit on the cheaper side, but it's a plastic Kydex style holster that protects the trigger guard. What's the other one that I have? I can't think. Tier 1 Concealed, another awesome design. Pretty much all the holsters I'm carrying though are either made out of a hard plastic or Kydex. I have carried shoulder holsters and ankle holsters that are old school leather boys, but they do malform with time. It is possible for a gun to be discharged even through a leather holster that has a lot of wear on it. So for me, I err on the side of pure protection for the trigger guard. Security when carrying. Now, another important thing when choosing handguns is going to be budget. But I want to make people aware that budget doesn't come down to just the price of an actual firearm. Budget is the ammunition you need for it, the holster you're going to put it in, possibly a safe or something to secure it if this is your first firearm. Budget also encompasses how many rounds it's going to take to actually practice. So not just enough to put in the gun, but to practice. Beyond that, budget also includes training. And I recommend that if you're going to even consider using a firearm for self-defense, whether that be in your home or concealed carrying out in the world, that you pay for training from a reputable trainer. There are a ton of different companies that you can go to. There's just no reason to be carrying a firearm without training when it is available. It's very important. This is a tool that has massive responsibility that come with it. So having reputable training, super important. So when you buy, I recommend for the actual firearm itself, you buy once and you cry once. And what I mean by that is you cry at the price because you paid a little bit more for that reliable handgun, rather than crying more than once because you buy a gun that I had that wasn't reliable, a Kel-Tec. Garbage. Had multiple issues with it, jamming, feeding the trigger. I could pull it all the way back against the frame and it wouldn't fire sometimes. I cried a lot of times with that firearm, but this older Gen 2 Glock 19, not super expensive back in the day when I bought it. I paid a little more than a Kel-Tec, but I have only cried once. Only ever cried once when it comes to Glocks. And so, that's a consideration. Another would be ecosystem, which is something I've kind of picked up from binging Nut and Fancy videos. When I first got interested in guns, he seemed like a reliable source. But I think it's an interesting point to point out that this Glock 19, the trigger is a little take up, it breaks. This Glock 43, little take up, it breaks. Okay, similar shape. A little bit different size, but the way the gun operates, magazine releases at the same place, slide, lock, stop is in the same place. They act the same. It's easy that when I train with this gun to kind of come over to this gun, it does translate. So that's beneficial. That saves me on ammunition. That kind of keeps me consistent across all my platforms, whether I'm concealed carrying or even this HK USP. I have a certain trigger variant that to have the take up and then it breaks. It shoots very similarly to a Glock, as close as I can make it at least, so that I'm practicing and I'm getting the most across each of my firearms for that practice. So that ecosystem does matter. Another thing I'll mention is magazines that fit my Glock 17 also fit my Glock 19. So that's a consideration when you're buying a handgun, that it fits in and works with the other things that you may eventually or do already own. Another thing I just want to mention is size examples. We talked about how size does matter between these two firearms. But when you jump from the largest gun, pretty much I have here is a HK-USP to a Ruger LCP, huge size difference. This being more of a full-size gun, this being like a backup, like a mouse gun they call it, like its own class almost. Two guns kind of closer to the middle. This is still a full-size gun. It's a little thinner than that HK-USP. This is a smaller single stack, they call it, because in the magazine there's one row of bullets versus a double stack. There's kind of a staggered stack in this. Holds more. These kind of come closer to the middle. Now there's actually something right in the middle when you get into like a SIG P365 or Glock 43X. You can find a gun that's almost perfect Goldilocks. That's kind of what I'm carrying more of now. So that's a size consideration, because size does matter. Other considerations being caliber. Across the board here, I have 3 different calibers represented, but 95% of the time I feel good about a 9mm Luger in the specific loading that I choose for home defense, whatever that may be, or I choose for concealed carry. That round with modern loadings is more than enough when you're using a handgun. I get on the smaller side, I really need to conceal something tiny. I'm accepting 380, but I'm not accepting anything below that size. Now, on the larger size, this HK-USP can shoot at 45 Super, which is like a 45 ACP plus P on steroids. It's kind of similar to a 10mm, if you're familiar with that. It kicks, it's loud, it can stop grizzly bears if necessary. Now, I don't carry this on a regular basis because it is more difficult to shoot and it does cost more. So it's more difficult because it recoils harder. So hard. Another thing is capacity. So when I'm looking at a smaller gun like this Glock 43, it's awesome to carry. It can fit almost anywhere, but the magazine only holds 6 rounds. So 6 plus 1 in the chamber is 7 versus a Glock 19. It's a little bigger, a little harder to conceal, but not impossible. The magazine fits 15 plus 1, so 16 rounds. That is a lot more than that Glock 43. So as far as I've read in studies and experiences, and the way even militaries operate now and law enforcement operates, is if you get in a gunfight, the more that you can shoot accurately, even inaccurately, not recommending that, but this is what's been told, at the target, at the intended target, the more likely you are to win the fight. So this comes down to the more bullets that I can shoot, the more likely I can stop that person. I'm always recommending that you shoot them with great discretion. When you pull the trigger on a firearm, you can't ever take that bullet back. So I'm not recommending that you willy-nilly shoot, but if there are multiple threats that need to be dealt with, and I have 17 or 20 rounds with an extended magazine in this Glock 17, there's no version of events where I'm going to be better served with the 6 rounds of this Ruger LCP. I'm always going to be better served by more rounds in a gunfight. So there's that. Another thing I'll mention is just technology-wise. Guns are making strides right now, but around the 1980s, we started to produce firearms that are plastic. They have a plastic frame, and that's become a beneficial thing. It makes the gun weigh less. So considering the materials out of your firearm, if you notice, every gun I've held up has a polymer plastic type frame. And that's by design. That's a reason I've chosen those firearms. I'm not against steel framed or alloy framed, all metal framed firearms. They work great too, but I will say the weight versus the trade-off, is it good? There are some places where weight is better. It does absorb some felt recoil. So that can be beneficial for someone who feels that they can hold the gun out but has a harder time with recoil. But someone who's carrying a gun all day, in my experience, I prefer a little bit lighter weight, making that kind of as a trade-off. The last thing I will point out, this trigger in the Ruger LCP, it's a double action, it's heavy. You pull it the whole way back and it fires, and then to shoot another round, you have to let it all the way out there, pull it again. Something like a Glock, this is a striker fired gun, different than the hammer in that. That's not as important, but the way the actual trigger feels is important. When you take a little take up and then it breaks right there, when the gun cycles, I can fire right there. So it's a lot shorter. So the actual trigger feel can make a difference in the weapon system that you choose to carry. So I actually carry as close as I can all of these guns to each other, making them as similar as possible. The Ruger's kind of the standout because it is so small. And I am used to shooting double action triggers. I've shot a lot of double action revolvers, but I would say in today's kind of scheme of things, single action and striker fired triggers are superior in my experience. So when it does actually come down to choosing a brand or model, I have 3 Glocks here, an HK, a Ruger. I'm gonna just recommend across the board that you choose something that is reliable based on a brand being reputable. So this brand makes firearms that are reliable on a regular basis, not my buddy had that and it worked. Because sometimes gun manufacturers that make unreliable firearms will actually make a good one. It's amazing. It's like a fluke. It's like a glitch in the matrix. But you don't want to stake your life on something that has kind of a sketchy reputation. At least I don't. So I don't recommend that you do either. So when it comes to those type of guns, for me, I'm going to immediately recommend Glock, SIG, HK, FN, Beretta for sure. Walther, I've had some issues with Walthers, but they got sorted out. But that's just me. Sample size of 1 is definitely a thing. I've even had issues with Glocks that got sorted out. So just remember that. Smith & Wesson is another brand that's pretty reliable. There are others, of course, but I'm going to go ahead and recommend those that I kind of have experience with actually working across more rounds fired in my own experience and in the experience of armed professionals. I personally prefer to carry and work with something that armed professionals use, people that actually depend on a firearm to save their life. I'm kind of thinking if I'm going to ever depend on a firearm, maybe my job doesn't put me in harm's way like that, but I'm going to try to pick up a firearm that is trusted by professionals. So I hope this has been helpful. Go ahead and comment below, like and subscribe if you'd like more content like this. Comment below though, what gun you carry, what gun you think is the best concealed carry firearm. Maybe there's things I missed, things I could improve on. Love to hear if you want to comment below. Mainly though, let's try to focus on what is the best handgun for concealed carry. Other than that, I'm totally out. Just remember, if you're buying a firearm, to practice with it, to train with it, to feel comfortable, to use things that are reliable and things that are proven to be safe. That's kind of what I'm getting at here. And using a gun that actually fits your role makes using it for that role, what you intend to use it for, much easier. Thanks and have a great day.